listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Well, hello, everyone. Happy Thursday, or whenever you might be listening. The great thing about a podcast is you get to listen on your time, not on mine. So whenever you get to hear this, I'm glad that you chose to let me spend some time with you. Yes, Myra is still taking care of her parents, and hopefully she will be back next week, and we will see. If you're new here, we thank you for giving us a try. We cover all kinds of things here. And before I even get into my introduction tonight, I've got to say this. It was in the news, and I have mixed emotions about this, okay? A genetically modified kidney was taken from a donor pig, and it has functioned normally after being transplanted into a brain-dead patient. Okay? It goes on to say that the success relies on advanced gene editing techniques. The presence of a sugar molecule known as alpha-gal, produced by most mammals but not humans, causes acute organ rejection by the body after surgery. But apparently we can take the organs of unclean animals and put them into people, and they function. So that raises the age-old question: just because we can do something, should we? I'll leave that up to you. Now, if you've never been here before, please visit GiveGod90.com and check that out. If you're looking for a good, there's still, about a month or so left of summer. If you're looking for a good read, I will suggest Inheriting Lies. If you want something a little lighter, Tradition to Truth. If you want something in between, God's Universe, God's Rules. There's my advertisement for the evening. I'm going to dive right in because I got a lot to cover. When I was putting these notes together, it was, I can get all this in. Sure I can. Maybe. Let me ask, if you've ever read something in the Bible, maybe you've read it many times, and all of a sudden you see something in a new way. Well, welcome to the club. Now, I know a lot of people who have done exactly the same thing. I've read passages often, but didn't see it until it was ready for me to see it. The timing had to be right. Now, some people will call this an epiphany. Some call it a revelation. Some call it a moment of realization. It doesn't matter how you choose to describe it. When the time is right, it will click in your mind, and you will never be able to unsee it. Right? You will forever be changed in a way. Maybe it was something you didn't actually read. Maybe you heard somebody read it, and even though they're reading it out of the same translation, maybe they emphasize a certain word differently than you're used to hearing. Maybe they paused at a different time than you're used to. It could have been something you were familiar with, and it finally connected. Maybe it was even connecting the time that it was happening. And that's kind of what happened to me this week. A passage I'm fairly familiar with. It's kind of strange, but I realized that the people who were making arguments about this particular passage, their timing was wrong. I'm going to read from King James. Two verses found in Matthew 16, and I want you to listen very carefully because there's a much better translation. But since most everybody's familiar with King James, that's where I'm going to start. And it begins in verse 26. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Now, as I was on the phone, I was referring to this verse, or these verses, I should say, and the strangest thought came to me. And that thought was, how did the people editing the Bible leave this verse in? Even though it matches with Revelation 20:12, if you remember that, we use it often. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. How is that concept? I want to say, how's that concept being left in our modern Bible? Because that's not the concept that most people are teaching today. Most Christians, anyway. It doesn't fit with the modern Christian concept of, oh, just believe in Jesus and you'll get into heaven. Right? So let's look at a better translation. For the Son of Man will come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will repay each one according to what has been done. You see, there's a slight difference. One puts the emphasis on Yeshua, on Jesus. The other on the Father. Now, of course, this happens before the crucifixion. Christians. And these are the words of Yeshua. These are words of Jesus. And he's saying that you will receive, what you are due according to what you've done. Modern Christians will say it's according to if you have received Jesus in your heart. But he said this before the crucifixion and resurrection. What he's speaking of, what he's talking about, what he's referring to, and he's not implying it, he's saying it straight out. Are you living according to the Creator's instructions, or are you trying to do things your own way? You see, it's the timing that we need to pay close attention to here. Yeshua, Jesus, has just insulted the Pharisees again. He's good at that, right? And he tells them it is a wicked and adulterous generation that asks for a sign. A few verses later, he asked the disciples, who do people say I am? Peter says, well, you're a son of the Most High. And he turns around and then basically says, you're going to be judged by your actions. It took me by surprise after I realized what this was saying, that it was actually left in the Bible. We know that there's things that the early church manipulated, added to, taken out. But oddly enough, oddly enough, we find it in Shem Tov's Hebrew Matthew. So I have to give this verse extreme credibility because of that. And actually, I would give this verse more credibility than others because it's found in a Hebrew manuscript. But it was not a new concept. The Hebrew people understood this. Job, we believe, was a contemporary of Abraham. They might not have known each other, but lived about the same time. Job 34:11. For according to a man's deeds, he, meaning Jehovah, repays him. According to a man's ways, he brings consequences. So as early as Abraham, this concept was known. Psalm 62:12 is another witness to this. And loving devotion to you, O Jehovah, for you will repay each man according to his deeds. Even Solomon picks up on this. I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, since there is a time for every activity and every deed. Even Jeremiah mentions this, kinda. Jeremiah 32:19. The one great in counsel and mighty in deed, whose eyes are on all the ways of the sons of men. That's everybody, okay? To reward each one according to his ways and according to the fruit of his deeds. 4 witnesses found in the Old Testament agree with what Yeshua Jesus said and what is revealed to John in Revelation. There's more. There's many more. But I'm using those so that you know that at least there are 2 places in the New Testament, at least 4 places in the Old Testament, that says it's not what you say, it's what you do. It means we're accountable for our actions, our works, the things that we do. Sadly, for every one of you who are hearing this, you no longer get to plead ignorant. That's right. Now you are responsible for your actions. Solomon writes in Proverbs 24:12, if you say, behold, we didn't know about this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? Does not the one who guards your life know? Will he not repay a man according to his deeds? You don't get to say, I didn't know that anymore. Sorry. Well, not really. You know, one of the things I'm trying to get across is people need to live the way they're designed to live. And now you know. Reference after reference, witness after witness. The Bible tells us from the time of Abraham until John's revelation, or well, I should say, until what was revealed to John, on Judgment Day, it matters what you've done. So what are you going to do about it? Now that you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep living in your excuses? Are you going to continue to provide reasons for your failure to comply to the Creator's instructions? Or will you at least consider that, the Creator really did know what he was doing when he said, don't bow down to any, and I mean any, other God except him? Will you continue to choose your own Sabbath? Or will you guard the seventh day and keep it separate from the others? Will you keep cheating others? Or desiring the things that your neighbor has? Think about that. We have some really nice neighbors where we live. But I can honestly say they don't have anything that I would be willing to give up my eternity for. Yeah, I know that's terrible English, but you know what I mean. If you're really concerned about your eternity, let your actions speak for themselves. Don't try to play the Christian card. Don't try to play the Christian card, right? And say, well, Jesus is in my heart, so I can do whatever I want or eat whatever I want. It doesn't matter. He knows my heart. Oh, Myra just chimed in on chat. She says, I agree. Well, I would hope so. Thank you, dear. Don't try to play the Christian card and say, Jesus is in my heart. I can do whatever I want. I can eat whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. 1 John 1:6 says something about that. If we say we're friends with him, yet walk in darkness, we lie and do not practice the truth. John gets that probably from Psalm 94:20. Shall the throne of lawlessness have fellowship with you, which devises trouble by the law? Or, again, in Solomon's Proverbs 2:13, who will leave the path of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness? Now, when John wrote what he wrote, he said, practices the truth. The word practice means to act on. And we know that the truth is the word of the Creator, the sacred word of the Creator. Are you going to act on the sacred word of the Creator? Yeah, I know. It's easier to run over the side of the cliff with the lemmings, right? The problem is the cliff you're running over with the lemmings leads into a lake of fire. I was texting with a friend yesterday, and he said, if you only have a little faith, you can understand these things. And I replied that, the more faith we have, the easier it is to understand. Then I got to thinking. And yes, I know that's dangerous for me to do sometimes, but I'll put it this way. The more faith we have, the more understanding we have. If you're putting your faith in the Creator, if you're trusting him for everything, you will have more understanding of what he has to say. If you're trusting your man-made doctrines, maybe your denominational doctrines more, you're going to be more confused because they don't always agree. The more we're willing to trust the Creator, the more we realize how important his instructions are for our lives. And the more we desire to live according to those instructions, right? Not because we want to go to heaven when we die. That's just plain silly. We desire to live according to those instructions because we should have a desire to please the one who spoke our name into creation. You see, a lot of people think that life begins at conception, and that's a very good argument for a civil court in the United States. When does life really begin? Your life begins when your Creator speaks your name. When He speaks your name is written in His book. You see, we are the ones who can choose to blot our name out of His book by our actions. You know, when Moses asked to have his name blotted from the book in Exodus 32, what does the Creator say in the very next verse? Exodus 32:33, Jehovah replied to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. That's action. That's action. To sin takes action. It has to be something you've done. You know, whoever chooses to ignore the Creator's instructions will have their name blotted out of the book. And that should cause fear to shake you to your very core. Not because you can't do anything about it, but because you've made the choice to ignore Him and His word. Think about it this way. If your father were the most wealthy person on earth, more money than anyone else, right? If you were his only child, and he said, if you want to inherit all this wealth, all you have to do is follow a few simple rules, right? Don't murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal anything. Just make sure you honor me the best way you're able to do so. Would you do that to please Him? Well, if you're willing to do that for money, why are you not willing to do that for your Heavenly Father? Why will you continue to make excuses? Why will you continue to offer reasons for failure? You see, unlike an earthly father, our Creator is willing to never mention the past if you are willing to repent and follow His instructions. A lot of people talk about, I'm a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. Do you know how a kingdom actually functions? Do you know how it works? If you want to be a citizen of a kingdom, you have to be obedient to the king. Uh-oh. I just spilled sour milk in almost everybody's oatmeal, didn't I? Guess what? If you're not being obedient to the sacred word of the Almighty, you don't get to be in His kingdom. You will be held accountable for your actions. Maybe it's time to change. Maybe it's time to stop running into the lake of fire with the lemmings going over the cliff. Maybe it's time to start living the way your Creator designed you to live. I'll let you think about that until Monday, when I will be back. And until then, many, many blessings, everyone.